Hi there, my name is Charles Glasson, and I'm a witness to God's awesome ability to change lives. Since the moment I opened my heart to Jesus Christ, my life has never been the same. Thank the Lord for finding me, for He revealed Himself to me when I did not ask for Him. Never calling on His name, He said, "Here I am, here I am." I thank you for your mighty works in my life. Thank you for doing for me what I could not do for myself. One of God's victories in my life was the deliverance from drug addiction. Here are a few examples to give you an idea of where I was in life so that you can see how the Holy Spirit has made me new. I started experimenting with drugs at an early age. Not really sure what age, but I was in junior high school. It began with this snatching the occasional beer from my dad's cooler while fishing at the pay lakes. I would drink just enough to get that warm, fuzzy feeling, and I thought that it was okay. You see, I looked up to my dad, and I wanted to be just like him. I never seen any negative consequences come from his drinking or smoking, which gave me a little assurance that there were none. And boy, was I wrong. I believe that this was the beginning of one of Satan's tactics to destroy my life. Stealing Dad's beer led to stealing Dad's pot. He always seemed to have it around, and I was curious. I remember smoking it a couple times, not really feeling anything, but when I finally did, I fell in love. That virgin buzz seemed to be the main goal every time I got high. Throughout high school, that's all I did was crave that buzz. After high school, I tried to do what any newly grad would do. I got a job and was living life, thinking I was on top of the world. I was making good money, had a pretty costly habit going on. I was starting to see a few of the consequences my addictions had. I had been drunk one night with some friends, caught the girl I was with kissing one of my buddies. Instantly hurt, I felt a fiery rage consume my body. That was the first time I visited the county jail. I was charged with battery, possession of marijuana, minor consumption, which all resulted in 1 year of probation. While on probation, I had a PO that seemingly did not care that I was still using. Each meeting I had with him usually went the same. He would ask me if I was clean, and every time I would be truthful. He would tell me to clean up, and then he would see me the next month. And the following month would be a repeat of the previous month. He would ask me if I was clean, and when I told him no, he would tell me to clean up as he handed me a card with next month's appointment on it. I thought I was pretty lucky. I didn't have to quit smoking. I never lied about it. He just didn't seem to care. I did end up violating about a month before my year was up, only because I was arrested for OWI. The courts extended my probation for another year and made me take a couple of alcohol classes. Not that big a deal, I thought. I could still smoke my pot and knock this year out, no problem. Everything was going just as planned until about the 8th month, when going to probation for another routine check-in didn't go so routinely. I was introduced to my new probation officer. This was his first time as a PO, and I was sure that he was going to do everything by the book, and he did. I was given a drug screen right away, and of course I failed. He was a little surprised that I had failed since I had been on probation for over a year. If I remember correctly, he only warned me about what would happen the next time I had a dirty drop. I was almost certain that I would not let that happen, since I had control. I would smoke for a week after my probation meetings and take 3 weeks or so to clean up. I did this for a while, hating that I could not get high for those few weeks. Things began to take a turn for the worst. One night, hanging out with some friends, I became exposed to meth. I'd done coke a couple times before, but nothing like meth. There was an instant obsession. It was that virgin buzz. My friends had told me that it would only be in my system for a few days or so. And at that moment, a light bulb went off in my head. It sounds crazy to me now, but at the time I thought it was quite brilliant. I would smoke pot for a week and then smoke crank a couple times after and still be clean for probation. I thought it was brilliant. Around 7 o'clock the next morning, I was arrested for possession of marijuana for the second time. This time it was a felony. I was still high on the speed and kept speeding for the whole first day in jail. 3 days later, my dad had bonded me out, and I was back on the streets. You see, me and my dad always bumped heads when he would bond me out. He thought he was going to control me. It was his way or the highway. I never thought about it, but I couldn't even control myself, let alone be controlled by him. I went right back to using. This was my normal way of life. Buying, selling, using. Buying, using more. Buying more. Meth became my drug of choice. I was on a constant mission to find that virgin buzz, and I did almost every time. I would try to get higher than I did the last time. What started out being an every other week buzz turned out to be an every weekend buzz, then twice a week, and before I knew it, I was smoking meth every day. A friend of mine who still suffers from addictions started to shoot up his meth. He told me that I had never been high until I'd shot up, and it didn't take much to convince me. I seen him do it a couple times, and I gave in. That night, I found what I thought was my best friend. Nothing else mattered. For the next several months, I would go on weekly binges, staying up for days at a time, not a single care. I remember going to court for owing probation their monthly fees, still up from 3 days before. To this day, I don't know how I made it out of there. When I was going to get high, I would tell my mother that I was leaving and I'd be home in a few hours. I never made it home within a few days. Hours would become days, and days would become weeks. I'll never forget the day that I finally realized that I had a problem. I thank God for that day. I'd been away from home for almost a month, with my mother having no idea where I was, if I was hurt or if I was okay, if I was dead or alive. I'd been high for about 27 days straight, and I looked it too. As I walked in the door, I witnessed my mother's heart break. I can't even imagine the pain that she endured that evening. I was so ashamed of myself that I went straight to the bathroom and closed the door. I just sat there looking at myself in the mirror, and who I seen was unrecognizable. I could no longer see myself in this person that I had become. I was around 45 pounds lighter and was covered with scabs and sores. They were all over my face, arms, and chest. I looked like a body who had crawled out of the grave, and that is no exaggeration. I was a junkie. I had a problem. I'm not sure what was said after I came out of the bathroom, but I left in a hurry. Shortly after that, I was arrested for check deception and set in jail on a $1,000 bond with no one planning on getting me out. I was really mad at first because I wanted to get high, but I soon realized that they saved my life by letting me sit there. And I sat for about 110 days, was released to New Directions in Lafayette, a men's inpatient center for addictions, and did 90 days there. When I finally made it through the program, I moved in with my dad and agreed to take some responsibility for myself. My dad got me a job working for the same company that he had worked for, and all was good. Keeping busy kept my mind off the drugs and kept me away from the old friends, but I could not escape myself. You see, while I was in treatment, I only stayed abstinent from the drugs. There were no changes to my way of thinking. I started using shortly after that, living life the same way as before and expecting things to be different. A few months later, I was back in rehab. I made it through 6 months before I started using heroin. This was the first time that I had ever tried it, and I felt that thirst, that crave of the virgin buzz, that I ended up chasing for about another 6 months while in rehab before they caught on. I did not know at the time why they didn't just ship me out of there. I was looking at some serious trouble back home, but I was spared. I ended up going to a halfway house that was downtown Lafayette. It was a little more recovery-oriented, a good start for a new life that would soon be flushed down the same drain that all the other new lives had been. I had been clean for another 6 months and was about to be released when I made plans to move in with a girl that I had met earlier that year. My sobriety was gone the moment I left the halfway house. I ended up drinking a beer on the way to her house. It seemed to become a constant party from that day on. I was going to work, then coming home and getting high and drunk every night. It seemed as if there had been no clean time at all. My life became one big, never-ending party once again, and I enjoyed it. I had it made. It was me and my drugs, and no one to come between us. It was a constant chase for that virgin buzz, and no one could stop me. Then a few years later, while in another halfway house, I was given the news that I was going to be a dad. This came as good news to me, and I was happy. Like I said, I was in a halfway house and was clean and had a clear mind. I made the decision that it was going to be different this time. I thought that I would be strong enough to do it this time. I had a kid on the way, and I was going to start my new life with her clean. But after 6 months of being clean, you could say that I became bored with the new life. When I made it home, it was like I forgot all that I'd worked so hard for. I remember getting right back with the coke, being up for weeks at a time, again as if there had been not a single moment of sobriety.